Hello, everybody. I'm Chris, and this is the Uniquely Unqualified, exclusively on YouTube for the moment. We're here in my temporary setup. I was a little excited to get this going, and so I wanted to thank everybody for subscribing to the channel, and I would also like to thank new people for tuning in as well. The point of today's episode is not necessarily an introduction. There's some content on the channel already. You've already seen me, one or two of my friends, in a few videos. We do a lot of adventures around in Mexico and the United States. But this podcast is going to be a new introduction, a new piece to the Uniquely Unqualified channel on YouTube. I want to try to disperse different content throughout the channel and potentially grow into something larger, where we have guests and different days, different uploads, different episodes of, be it fishing or spelunking in caves or what have you. But anyway, today I just wanted to get a few things off my chest because everything's pretty hot right now in the United States. I was born in the United States. I don't currently live in the United States. However, I do still have residency and citizenship, obviously, property. A little bit of a background on Chris is I'm going to be 40 years old here pretty soon. I worked in construction most of my life. I stopped doing that, joined the military, was in Afghanistan a few times, and was able to go to college. Got done with college, started a small construction business that got absolved, and that is basically what finds us here today in one of our properties down here in Zihuatanejo, Mexico. Um, so first off, we've been tracking a lot of the news going on in the United States, and I've heard something said by many people in the online influencer world, saying that we need to tone it down. We need to bring the temperature down, and I just want to piggyback off of that. So, regardless of what you feel about the political administration currently in charge, uh, or the one that just left a year ago, um, you know, I have been experiencing this as well through some friend and family networks where politics is dividing our love for each other and our trust for each other. This just simply isn't acceptable. Side note, I believe that we're being played. I think that we're being duped. I think that there is a big game here. I'm not going to claim to be a conspiracy theorist. However, it does seem that there is a real effort to divide the United States public. However, the people that are at fault for this happening are ourselves. The only thing that you can do is react to something that is being placed upon you. Um, I recall a time not very long ago. Again, I'm not quite 40. I'll be 40 soon. I recall a time where families and friends could all sit around at a table, dinner table, dining table, Denny's, whatever, with all differing opinions and political thought, religion, etc. And the rules were, you don't ask a woman how old she is, and you do not discuss religion and politics at the dinner table. This is something that we simply just need to discipline ourselves to get back to. We need to we need to get back to minding our manners. Unfortunately, we've got a long road ahead of us to do that, but we need to get back to not discussing sensitive subjects, because we all largely want the same end result. We all want peace on earth, goodwill toward men, money. We all want to be happy. We all want to be satisfied. We all want to be loved. We all want to be successful and prosperous. The devil is in the details with that. However you want to get on with that, that's your own personal choice. Feel free to not share, every time your big toe cracks with somebody. Feel free to not share every damn idea that comes into your mind the moment that it comes into it. Just if you're with your friends and family and you like to, dress funky and espouse more socialist ideas, don't be mad at your parents because they voted for Trump. Just go to dinner and sit there and discuss what everybody did today. We do not need to have these topics of conversation in our faces every single waking moment of every single day. It's destroying us. We have to stop that. We have to come together. I see these videos on X where these families literally get torn apart because dad agrees with the Trump administration and daughter thinks dad's a bigot because she's frankly indoctrinated into a very, very, very strange ideology that has only shown failure throughout history. But we'll get a little bit further into that. We're all on the same team. We're all Americans. We all, again, want the same thing. It used to be that we supported the President of the United States, regardless of if you voted for him or not. When Trump first got elected, I was in the military. I was watching DirecTV, and there was Vice, the Vice channel. There were two young black women a couple days after Trump was elected, potentially inaugurated. I don't remember the dates of when this would have aired, but it was two young black girls dancing, and it was as a commercial for the TV channel, and they were wagging their finger, shaking around, saying, "Hey, not my president." Well, yes, he in fact is. And if you start pushing a narrative, well, I didn't vote for him, so that's not my president. This isn't Congress. This is the president of the United States. We need to support him. We need to want him to do a good job. When Joe Biden was elected, I did not vote for Joe Biden. I would never vote for somebody in that camp, especially now. I wanted the best to come from that. I did not want to initially attack the Biden administration, no matter how shady or seedy the election process was. I'm not claiming anything about the stolen election in 2020. I'm not. However, there was a lot of funky stuff going on there, and it just doesn't pass the smell test, in my personal opinion. However, the new president was Joe Biden, and that's fine, because that's what happens. We go left, we go right, we go right, we go left, left, right, right, left, right. We've done it forever, and we need to show support for our leaders and reserve opinion until the end. Until the end. Trump's a year into his presidency. I don't think any president does good a year into their presidency. So the Joe Biden administration, everybody knows, even if you voted for Joe Biden, even if you are a Democrat, everybody knows it was generally a catastrophe. And if you sit there and you want to claim all these huge wins about the Biden administration, then bring the paperwork and we can sit down and have a discussion. It'd be the same thing that I would have to argue about with Barack Obama. And that's where I'd like to segue into something. I mentioned that I was in the military. In 2008, I was on a training exercise in the woods in Missouri. We were pulled out of that training exercise to go vote. We needed to vote. And for the 2008 voting cycle, it was against Barack Obama and John McCain. I have naturally, my entire life, bent towards a more conservative person. I have never been a partier. I have never debauched. I've never had multiple sexual partners. I've always worked. I've worked since I was a very, very young child. Um, I voted for John McCain. And I think there was one other guy in my platoon of young privates that voted for John McCain. I voted for John McCain not because I knew much about him or because I liked him, but because the only thing I was actually being told about the presidential candidate Barack Hussein Obama, never mind I'm in the military hunting people with middle names of Hussein, but I digress. The only thing I knew about him is first black president, first black president, first black president. That doesn't mean anything to me. I want to know what is going to be the result of this presidency. What are you going to do? Because hope and change doesn't cut it for me. Nothing was really good under the George W. Bush administration. Arguably one of the worst presidents of all time. Obama tops George W. Bush. Biden tops Obama. But we can go back to Jimmy Carter, Woodrow Wilson, other. We can find and float out conservatives, presidents that we can all say. I said George W. Bush, that we just disagree with. It's not a good presidency, not a good look. So we get pulled out of this training environment. I vote for John McCain. The next day, when the votes were tallied up, a staff sergeant from a different platoon, black man, requested everybody to wake up a few minutes early, and by request, yelling and screaming around a few minutes before anybody was willing to wake up. We're out in the field and, needing to train. And this guy was notoriously not a cool dude. And all he wanted to do was get us all in formation, the whole company. And I don't know what the first sergeant was, but he was given this grace by the rest of the leadership. And he stood in front of the company and took about 30 seconds, called us to attention, announced that Barack Obama, a black man, is our new president. And this black NCO, non-commissioned officer, staff sergeant, the United States Army, did not dismiss us. He just simply left face and walked away and didn't give us any command, and he got nothing. And when you're a young private in a young unit just getting stood up, you're fresh out of basic training, you're taught if you're not excused, you don't leave. And so this guy just left us standing there in the cold, dark, wet Missouri November, in my opinion, just to be an ass. But later, excuse me, not later, but earlier in basic training, we were told what our chain of command is. And at the top of that hierarchy is the commander in chief, also known as the President of the United States of America. And in the military, you respect the commander in chief, period. I'm not going to get into what is lawful order. Um, very, very, very difficult to claim something is an unlawful order. The point is that my recollection of the past, where we do not ask a woman how old she is, and we do not discuss religion and politics at the dinner table, I remembered that, and you're that's reiterated in the military, where you you respect the office. You respect the office as an American citizen, like it, lump it, or otherwise. It binds us together to respect the office of the President of the United States of America. It binds us together to say, well, hope this dummy does a good job, because Lord knows the rest of them can't get squat done. Um, going back to the Barack Obama thing, I think George W. Bush really broke a lot of people want to say Obama was the person that kind of broke the era of peace and that I experienced in the 90s. I could rack my brain forever and not pull up one example of racism that I saw in the 90s. I grew up in Los Angeles, California. We all lived together, worked together, loved each other. It was seriously a colorblind society. Whatever happened during the September 11th thing, that actually brought us together, but then there was, division. And then Barack Obama comes around, first black president, and all of a sudden we're the most racist nation in the world, but we have the first black president. And rightly, I could see how some hillbillies would probably say, screw you to that. I'm not racist. Well, now you kind of didn't make me racist, but now I feel like you suck because you're calling me that and you happen to be of a different race. So where was I getting to there? Anyway, Barack Obama's slogan was hope and change. Um, what are we hoping for? What are we changing? There really wasn't clarity on that. And that kind of leads me into the low IQ, low information voting block. And that needs to stop. We cannot have, a few years ago, the Democratic Party wanted to throw out that we were going to lower the voting age to 16. Are you mad? Are you absolutely insane? The vote 18 is too young, in my humble opinion. You shouldn't be allowed to vote until you're fully developed. You're a full adult, a fully developed adult, and that means mentally. You're going to have ideas that change by the time you're 25. I use 25 because that's generally around the brain is done developing. Generally, um, you're going to I'm a far different person than I was at 16, than I was at 18, then 19, then 25, then 30, then 35. I am a very different person, and you're going to change. You're going to change so much. And an 18-year-old that's just pissed off at the parents and wants independence is going to vote for somebody telling them that things can be free. They'll never be free. Stop voting for people that say that they're going to give you something for free. If somebody tells you that they're going to give you something for free, they are going to take more from you than they're going to give you for free. There's no such thing as free. Even if you go to a fundraiser and there's a bag of potato chips and a soda, free. It's not free. Might not cost anything to you, but maybe you had to pay an entry fee to get into the event. Maybe your time. It's costing you something. On a monetary level, it's costing the person putting on the event. It costs them money. It doesn't take very long to go down the line and find that it's not actually free. So stop voting for people that tell you that they're going to give you something for free. Stop doing that immediately. Just if we just stop that, we would see an unbelievable change in our politics today. Anyway, so we have a lot of people that they again, we all want the same thing. We're all going about it different ways, and the devil's in the details. I want to see more people work and succeed. I want to see more people educate themselves, no matter how that is. There's very, very simple ways to educate yourself and very simple ways to stay away from tropes and bad information. Very, very simple. You don't have to just scour the internet for every wild QAnon thing that you see and claim is truth. It's another part of the problem that we have is people don't know how to research. They don't know how to educate themselves. But anyway, under the whole Barack Obama thing, we saw more deportations than any president ever, more civilian casualties in war through drone strikes, I believe, than any president ever. The economy took a major dump. Everything got more expensive. I was in Afghanistan for 3 years while Barack Obama was president. And in that 3 years, I, as a DOD employee, watched things go to hell. And that wasn't under a Republican. That was under Democrat Barack Obama. I watched things be a little bit better economically under a conservative president. And then everything kind of tanked under Barack Obama. And largely, I think that Barack Obama got in because the media are genius people, and they can swing a narrative, and they can tell you who's good and who's bad, and you'll just take it. We all have people in our family like that just watch NBC, and that's gospel, or Fox, and that's gospel. And anyway, so I wrote a paper in college called Voting 101, where I argued that we need to raise the voting age to 25, and we have to have a full educational system where we know who these people that are running for office are. Like the state of Oregon has voter pamphlets where it's not enough, but it's something, where they have all the political candidates running for office in each elected position that they're running for, and they give you a background of their full name, date of birth, where they were born, brief bio of their high school, their personal education, and professional prowess. And I think that we should, side note, voting day is a national holiday. No ifs, ands, or buts. Maybe make it 2 straight days off, because there's a lot of people in the country, and having everybody on a day off to go vote on one day could be a little chaotic. But I think that we need to make voting a national holiday, because 1/3 of the population elected Joe Biden. 1/3. Everybody wants to say the biggest voter turnout in history. Well, that doesn't mean, excuse me, it doesn't mean jack shit when only 100 million people voted in a country of 330, 350 million. So because everybody's so busy and can't take time away to just take an hour and go vote. And I get it. I've fallen into that before. But we also can't let the lowest IQ, the lowest information, the lowest producing people in our society, assumably a third, vote for everybody else. We can't do that. I think that's a big reason why we're in the position that we're in, is because voting does work, and you saw that. There was a big hullabaloo about 2020 and Joe Biden, but then Donald Trump comes in 2024 and blows the Democratic Party out of the water, and voting works. And so we need to do that. Vote. Stop voting for people that are offering you free shit. Stop now. Don't ever do it again. That'll solve a lot of problems. But we need everybody to get out there and go vote. I am not comfortable with the lesser 1/3, regardless of what I vote for, the lesser 1/3 of our society dictating the next 4 years. We all got to get out there and do that. So anyway, I think that, and this is kind of a segue into everybody's favorite New York representative, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who made an absolute, and I don't, you can try to paint this and on talking points that she might be good on naturally or typically, fine. She's just good at that. When it comes to not knowing geographically where Taiwan or Venezuela are, that's a big problem. And it should be a big problem for everybody, even her constituents. So you mean to tell me that a cocktail waitress, that's it, nothing else, not an accountant, not a business owner, nothing, just a cocktail waitress. I meant to do a little bit of research to find out exactly what district of New York she was elected in and the population of that district. Maybe if I can remember, I'll bring it up next time. But either way, any amount of pressure that I've ever seen this woman put under, she folds like a wet bag. I mean, she's just not an educated person. I'm not going to say that she's stupid. I won't say that she's unintelligent. I think most people have the ability to be intelligent, but she is a very uneducated person. She is bought and paid for. And I remember years ago, there was this stance that she took that was opposite the greater Democratic Party. And then she all of a sudden flipped her position on it. And there was footage of her, crying in Congress or something. And I just kind of took that as thinking that, she took the money and shut her mouth and got in line. Who knows? Anyway, we can't have unintelligent, uneducated people in our politics. We have to educate ourselves to who these people are. This isn't high school prom king and queen. This is true government leadership. We must have competent, educated people, Democrat, Republican, Independent, whatever religion that you are, but we have to have these people above board. They need to be the best of the best, not a adult that served booze and says that Venezuela is south of the equator. It's a little important to me that a U.S. politician that is trying to discuss international affairs, it's kind of important to me that she knows where these countries are. And I'm not just going to pick on um, um, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I'll pick on Zoran Mamdani. You know, I caveat: New York has been pretty rough for a long time, and however long it's been since Zoran Mamdani has taken over for mayor of New York, the right-wing media has done their best to basically show the Fox viewership, look at all this horrible stuff going on in New York just 1 month just 1 month after Zoran Mamdani. Look, man, New York had big problems before that kid got in there. Um, so to falsely claim that every shortfall that New York has right now is solely because of him, that's very disingenuous, Fox News, and you shouldn't be doing that. We should be highlighting very specifically and kind of only his tax laws that he's wanting um, to implement. That's what you should be talking about, and in which case it's going to fail because they all fail. But then we have Seattle. What's her name? Katie Wilson. Literally a do-nothing basement dweller. I have nothing else to say. Um, you know, then we can go to the highest rung of ridiculousness and call out Gavin Newsom. I was born in California. I was born in Granada Hills, which is a small suburb, just one side or the other of Northridge in the the San Fernando Valley, and I was raised in Los Angeles. I When I was 18, I graduated high school in Los Angeles. I graduated a year early. I had a job. I had money. I financed my first car. I had my first apartment in Los Angeles. Los Angeles treated me well. I was good with my money, and so I had money from a little job that I had, and I could afford a car payment, unbelievable car insurance. I could afford my rent. I could afford food. I could afford fun, and I think I made a base wage of $2,000 a month, and California's economy at the time was going gangbusters, and I was a delivery and installation guy for an appliance and HVAC store, and I would get tips. And so largely all of my fun tokens were provided by my tips. And so if I wanted to go out to eat, well, I delivered I had 4 to 6 deliveries that day, and I every one of them, gave me a tip no less than $10, $10, $50 sometimes you'd get tips. If you have to haul a refrigerator upstairs, you're getting tip. And so, I remember Los Angeles, I remember California going up and down the coast. Man, that was one of the greatest times. It was one of the greatest times. I got to hang out with my brother a lot, did my work, and I would go home and I'd go run around. I lived right on the corner of Sepulveda Boulevard, Burbank Boulevard, by the 405 freeway on the Sherman Oaks side of the Van Nuys border. And so I would walk down to the newly redone Sherman Oaks Galleria, and I would be able to get ice cream or dinner or whatever. go surfing on the weekends, go over the Sepulveda Pass, drop into Santa Monica. Like I remember California. It was fantastic. Um, I had my little friend group. It was cool. Um, and now I've been back a couple times and it just sucks. The place just sucks. You can still claim the weather's great. And I guess if you're a super duper millionaire, then I guess it could still be great. But I was just looking at a statistic today. It's the least affordable state to live, the highest taxes, the highest homeless per capita. More people, I think it's a person leaves California every 1 minute and 44 seconds. And then, and here's my pick on with Gavin Newsom is this snake oil salesman, this shyster, will sit there and say, no, our population is going up. Not legitimately, I mean, technically, but not legitimately. The reason why it's going up is because of immigration, migration, illegal immigration. That's why it's going up. People aren't moving to California. Americans are not moving to California. Illegals are migrating north of the border into California. And by the way, I spend a lot of time in Mexico, very, very far south in the state of Guerrero, um, Michoacan, Mexico City. Um, I've been to a handful of states here, a handful of towns and cities. This place is great. And Mexican patriots are not trying to leave their country. They want to stay here. A very, very, very large amount, I think over 50% of the illegal immigration crisis that we saw under the Joe Biden administration were coming up from the southern border, but they weren't Mexicans necessarily. They were Guatemalans, Venezuelans, Indians, Chinese, Afghan, um, people, just white folks from Europe, just trying to get in. And California's right above the line. So that's Gavin Newsom is gaslighting the public by stating that California is doing great. California does have a large GDP. They produce a lot. They export a lot to the country and the world. But if you don't got people to work there or buy the products there, then it ain't worth much. Um, Gavin Newsom is a classic example of, he is the two-faced politician. And all those weird hand things that he does are, anybody that moves their hands around a lot is suspect to me. So it's a distraction. It's not only is it kind of like a coping thing. Some people look up when they're thinking and talking. Some people fidget. Some people tug on their nose. Some people move their hands a lot. But a lot of what the hand moving thing is signs of gesture, and they're trying to. Do you see what I mean here? We need to coax everything out to this side, and we're going to bring more people in, and the economy's going to go up, and we're going to be, stop voting for people that move their hands a lot. um, so I don't think I have any good things to say about Gavin Newsom. He ruined my home state. Um, I would love to be able to, live in LA again. Uh, all of there's so much to do. I'm a recreational person. I'm active, and LA is a great place to be active. And when I was young, my uncle was a director, and my father was on a soap opera, and a couple small movie roles, and so I was around that crowd. Um, it was. I just have such great memories, and um, with all the crazy draconian crap that came out of the blue ran states over COVID, I just watch these people do all the wrong things, and Gavin Newsom was one of them. He is a rules for thee, not me person, and we can't have that. Can't have that. We have to have a leader. He's not a leader. He's a friggin' rich kid. I think he's related in some way to Nancy Pelosi. He's a rich kid, and he is completely disconnected, and he will lie his ass off to tell you what you want to hear and get you to vote for him. That guy is in there for uh, his own gain, and that's why we need to have better education uh, uh, and in voting, and we need to raise the voting age so that after you turn 18, you've had a job. Assumably, you've had a job for a little while, and you know what it's like to pay taxes, and you know that you want your taxes to be spent appropriately, at the very least. Um, low end conversation there, but we I could pick on Mitch McConnell. Um, I could. It's just way easier to pick on the lefties, to be honest with you. Anyway, so um, we need to make better voting choices. Um, as I said, voting does work. It does work. It worked in 2024, and when you see the voting map in 2024 for Trump, that's one of the reasons why I I I have pause about the legitimacy of the 2020 election, because of tens of millions of dollars in Trump's campaign actually went to courts. They went to the Supreme Court. They challenged. Unfortunately, most people don't know this, never heard about it, because none of the legacy media reported on it. We had gotten so out of hand with the COVID and the mail-in ballots, and my grandma's been dead for 8 years, and Billy Bob voted in her name, so he got a big reason why a lot of his money was spent at the Supreme Court level was to ensure, not to ensure his victory, but to ensure that proper votes got counted. And it seems to me that either the entire nation said, "Oh my goodness, what did we do? We're so silly. We're so dumb. We shouldn't have never voted for this guy. Vote Donald Trump back in." Or there was a bunch of tomfoolery going on, and Donald Trump attacked the courts legally to ensure that there's not going to be any mail-in ballots, no, um, if or whatever. So anyway, if we make better voting choices, I just don't think that we have these kinds of problems. Um, but we we have to educate ourselves properly to who these people are, not what they say. I don't care about what they say. You shouldn't care about what they say. You should care about where they're from, what's their family like, what business have they grown, what financial markets have they conquered, what jobs have they had. You need to know who these people are as people, not what their message is. The Democratic Party is all about the message, message, and they have a lot of action, and their message is usually antithetical to their action. In my humble opinion, they will say, oh, it's for your safety, but we're taking your freedom of speech away. Yeah, no, you can't do that. It's for your safety. We're going to come after the Second Amendment. No, you can't do that. Anyway, I blame a lot of this on legacy media. NBC, CBS, MSNBC, Fox. There's a few good outlets out there, but I'll pick on the conservatives, and Fox right now is saying, Donald Trump got elected, and Fox just jerks him off about every damn thing he does. It's like, oh, Mr. President, thanks to your fine leadership, Mr. President, fine leadership, thanks to your leadership, blah. And they just shove it in your face, and that's sketchy, just the same. And so, you're creating a group of people that think that this guy is infallible, and then on the other side of that line, you have a group of people that think that he's freaking Hitler. And again, education. You can't go around calling people Hitler. I'm not gonna beat that horse to death, but again, we need to be supporting our president. We also need to all be aware of his shortcomings or his shortfalls. We also all need to be aware of the good things that he does. And it must be acknowledged. It must be. It has to be. Um, it's $2,000 check that everybody's supposed to get. Well, as long as it's coming from, I haven't looked into it much. I don't even know if I qualify for it. I think your earnings, I could be wrong, but it's kind of the same thing with the COVID thing. If you were of an earnings of a certain amount, you didn't get the relief check. Anyway, maybe I'll check into AOC's district population and who gets a $2,000 check. If that's actually coming from, tariff dividends, that's a good thing. And we should all say, hey, man, everyone is getting this $2,000. Democrats and Republicans under Trump. And we have to acknowledge, I'm not saying that it's a good thing. I'm saying that after research, if it is a good thing, we need to know, and we need to acknowledge as a whole, as a society, and back that decision and say, hey, yeah, good job. Good job. When Joe Biden got elected and he pulled us out of Afghanistan, I lived in Afghanistan for 2.97 years, according to my DD 214. I was there for 2.97 years. And I am one of the biggest proponents for getting out of there. Get out. And he got us out. It was a mess. It was horrible. It was the most uncoordinated crap that you've ever seen. I'm not getting into that. But getting us out of Afghanistan was a good thing. His reasonings behind it were very bad because a week later, 2 weeks, whatever, we were throwing money and resources at Ukraine. And so, yeah, he got us out of Afghanistan, but kind of like the $2,000 check thing, where's it coming from and why? Well, he got us out of Afghanistan so he could funnel a bunch of money into Ukraine. You can't have your cake and eat it too, right? If you want to funnel hundreds of billions overnight into the Ukraine, then we can't do the Afghanistan thing anymore. So I don't think that we should have been in I don't think that we should have stayed in Afghanistan. I'm glad that we're out. We're kind of not out, but I'm glad that we pulled out. But for the reasons why, bad reasons why. Anyway, I don't want to get too far off topic. I got my notes that I keep glancing down here, trying to stay on track. Trying to stay track this first thing. I'll get more comfortable at it, make more sense as we go along. I think that I talked to my mom, and it's very difficult to have a conversation with my mother because she gets her information from like one place, maybe two. And they are places where no one should be getting information from. Facebook is not news. I remember the first time, it's 2011. I remember the first time I realized that NBC was garbage. I think it was 2011. The local channel um, where I lived had this young, beautiful anchor news lady. She was given a commercial to advertise her portion on the news, and the first thing it was, I'm up at 4 o'clock every morning, and I am looking through Facebook to find the most relevant stories of the day. Well, I don't want you looking at Facebook. I can look at Facebook. You need to be a flippin' reporter, not looking through Facebook. Facebook isn't news. And so, I became disenfranchised with the news a long time ago. And it continues to plague my mom's brain, to the point where she'll pop off with some crap that they said, and somewhere around 99.9% of all the shit that she says to me is factually untrue. But her and my stepfather will just take it as gospel because it comes out of the TV and it comes off of NBC. And, that's creating division. That's part of the problem that we have. The days of Walter Cronkite, the days of who's the crazy dude with the big mustache, Geraldo Rivera. And I think he was good at one point, and then he did his talk show. Kind of jumped the shark there. But CNN's ratings are in the toilet, have been forever. The network's probably going to get shut down. Same thing with, if you look at what do you call it, the ticker tape at the bottom of the screen or whatever for like the CNBC or the MSNBCs, they all have this really weird look to them. They're very underproduced. There's not a lot of money going into making it look good, but it's all blue. Every one of them is blue. No red, white, and blue. Just blue. And white, I guess. But they make it very, very, very clear. They shove it in your face. Blue. Blue, 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 blue. And we have a blue angle, and we're going to do blue. That's all we're going to do is blue. That's bad. And, Fox and Sky News that just stroke the Trump train, that's bad too. Because we need to know, what's going on around the world. One of the things that I got pissed off at my mom about was she said, well, the police officer was killed at the Capitol building on January 6th insurrection. The only person, look it up, the only person that was killed at the United States Capitol building in D.C. was a white female, I believe, Navy veteran. That was the only woman that was killed. You don't hear that on those networks. You hear about a police officer that died the next day in a hospital, very old, fat man. Maybe he was under duress, but damn it, he didn't die at the Capitol. And so don't tell people that, but they do. And so I blame all this on the legacy media and the trash leadership that any of these people claim to hold, and they're perpetuating just absolute nonsense and just horrible stuff. I'll just go on a small tangent. The ICE thing in Minneapolis with Tim Walz and Jacob Fry and what's his name, Keith Ellison. Those people are really, really crappy, unpatriotic people. Those people are the reason why Minneapolis was torn to shit. not Donald Trump or ICE. Donald Trump was not out there saying to hell with citizens and all this. He was doing nothing different than Barack Obama did. The only difference was ICE was doing these performative traffic stops, checking ID, only because the governor, Tim Walz, and Mayor Fry, whatever his last name is, were not cooperating with the federal government. That's why that happened. That is not Donald Trump's fault. That is their fault. And then they continue to go on their TV and their speeches and say, take that phone out and, press record, and hold them accountable, blah, 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 blah. That's bad. Can't have people doing that. You need the government to work together. Especially when, 12 years ago, or yeah, 12 years ago or whatever it was. Damn, almost 20 years ago. It's 2026. So, yeah, a long time ago, Barack Obama was doing all this stuff, and CNN was doing puff pieces, ride-alongs with ICE agents, just saying, "Oh, the men and women of ICE, they're so brave." Well, what switched? What switched? What switched? We're like, there's a guy, Graham Hancock, and he says that we are a species with amnesia, and he is right. He is correct on that one. People don't remember what the hell happened to them last week. COVID is under the rug. This Jeffrey Epstein thing hopefully doesn't go by the wayside, but it probably will. The Minnesota ICE stuff, that's going to go away real quick. People are going to forget about all that. Anyway, so I really blame the news media, the legacy media, on all that stuff. I really, really do. Anyway, I want to go into something a little bit different. I'll start with something not negative, but just we're gonna close the political conversation with that for right now. But I want to go into something that's been bouncing around in my head for a little while, and that is these young people that are dyeing their hair funny colors and putting a bunch of piercings in their face and making insane comments and on the internet and otherwise being a very unproductive member of society. So I have a member of my family, a guy who wants to be himself, and everybody should be themselves. However, if you have a job, someone is paying you for your time, which means that time that they're paying you for belongs to them, the person paying you. And if they say that they want you to do something, you have to do it or leave. So there's a lot of young folks out there that are very, very, very confused about what it means to be personally independent, be yourself, or what you can still be, crazy, screaming, emotional socialist or frickin' guru or whatever with a decent haircut and properly fitting clothes, and you go to work and you produce. I think if you dress and behave like what you see when you walk in behind the counter of a Starbucks, you have just placed the ceiling over your own head of working at Starbucks. You're never going to make $1 million or own a home working for Starbucks with a bunch of metal in your face and some Kool-Aid colored hair and unicorn tank tops and rainbow pants. I used to be an employer. Um, I'm allowed to make the decision on who I hire. I would only hire people that can be a positive reflection of the company. If one of my crew members rolls up to a construction project, they're going to look professional. They're not going to be this wild, anticked, I forgive tattoos completely. Tattoos is a everybody got tattoos. Having tattoos doesn't mean you're a bad person, doesn't mean you're a dummy, doesn't a lot of them are really pretty actually. Um, Unfortunately, we're living in a day and age where if you have blue hair, I can pretty much assume and tell uh, your emotional threshold and your tolerance for work and stress. I can tell you where it's at just by the color of your hair. So I'm not going to hire you, which means that you're not going to get a $60,000 a year job starting out in construction because you're a piss poor representative of my company. That's why you guys can't get ahead, is because you're doing it to yourselves. It's not the system. It's not the man. It's not Donald Trump. It's not the Republicans. It's not MAGA. It's you. It's you doing it. You need to present yourself orderly and professionally. You need to have work ethic. If you want to become the manager, you're going to skip out on a few breaks. If you insist on your 15, I get two 15-minute breaks and a 30-minute lunch and I'm going to take it. Okay, fine. Yes, you're right. I am legally obligated to give you that. And you have every right as an employee to take that. Absolutely. But guess what? When it comes down to hiring somebody or promoting somebody for a much higher stressful position with more responsibility, I'm here to tell you, even low level management, you're skipping a few breaks. You're working through a few lunches. And then once you get into running the company, you eat lunch at your desk while you're working. And there's a break every now and then to go to the bathroom or walk around the building for a hot minute every once in a while. You're doing it to yourselves. You're putting your own ceiling above your head by the way that you present yourselves, by the way that you behave. It's not my fault. It's not my fault that I'm not going to hire somebody that I know is going to be a poor representation of my company, both visually and um, production wise. I know that you're not going to give me your all. I've got a cool story about this cat, young kid, super talented, finish worker, um, not a bad framer, not a bad drywaller either. But when it comes to finish work, spot on. Meticulous attention to detail. His very first day on the job was Friday. He had plans, whatever his plans were. And we had an emergency call from a client with a decent portfolio. There was a big old flood in a basement. And oh boy, we got to get mitigation over to suck water out, dry stuff out. And it's, 6 o'clock on a Friday night. Well, everybody's Friday's ruined. Go to work. Got to go to work. I was very blessed to have great crews. I built great crews. These guys, I would put them in front of any client I had. I was proud of my guys. And the first day, I thought this kid was gonna just never come back on Monday, and he came back on a Monday. Anyway, he worked for me for about a year, and he just was a stud. And routinely was at the office before me. Um, I give him his list of everything he needed to do, and he attacked it. And he kept his vehicle clean. He kept his equipment serviced. Um, he was He was great with his time, his personal time management. Anyway, this kid comes to me, great kid, tall, fit, handsome, punctual, a little quiet. He could have spoke a little bit louder, but excellent kid. And he came to me and he said he wanted to, he needed this much money to continue to work. And I said, okay, I'll go to bat for you, and we'll get you paid. So I go and discuss with the powers that be, um, the accountant, the the owner's wife, and the owner, and the four of us made the decision to give this kid the raise that he wants. Um, However, that kind of a raise comes with a lot of responsibility, and so we all agreed to give him his raise. He comes in to the meeting, and we say, we're giving you your raise. And the one little trick I had up my sleeve was, you want to make 55 grand a year, 60 grand a year working at a little construction company. Well, guess what, pal? Now you make the schedule. So that's your new responsibility. And God bless him, man, this young man just worked smart and hard, and he was so good. Now he owns his own construction company, his own house. He bought his own house when he was like 24 and 23, 24, something like that. Just a great kid because he presented himself well. He didn't complain. He would call me and say, how busy are we? Do I have time to sit down for lunch? Sometimes I told him, I was like, man, I really need you to hit a drive-through. You can do what you want, but I really need you to hit a drive-through and shove that burger in your mouth and get to the next job. Because if you don't, we're going to be behind tomorrow, and nobody wants to be behind. And he did it. That kid's well on his way being a millionaire. So, he's not putting any ceilings above his head. He behaves right. I don't care who he votes for, or what he thinks about women's rights, or stuff like that. I don't care. He's a wonderful representation of the company, and he works harder than anybody else there, including me, because he would be earlier than me a lot of times. Anyway, so I kind of back on this family member that I have. This guy, he talk about putting ceilings over your own head. This guy does it. He came to me a few years ago, and he said he was 33 or 32 or whatever, 33, 32 years old, and he comes to me and he says, Chris, I went through my closet, I don't have one regular shirt. Yeah, bro, that's probably part of the problem. You can still wear a colorful shirt, but have it look nice. Have it be nice. Anyway, so, he unfortunately does not make a livable wage. Um, he can claim that he's happy, uh, but the amount of financial stress and familial stress that he puts himself under just because he wants to do things that way, he's never seen the other side of the aisle, and so he doesn't know what happiness is. But that's what happens when you dress like a dummy and do your hair up like a dummy and look like a dummy and behave like a dummy. That's what happens. So anyway, if you want to be happy, you got to work. You got to work. That's energy. You have to put forth energy. The harder you work, the man, you need to do a good job. Money cannot be the thing that you're after. A good job needs to be the thing that you're after. Money is a byproduct of doing a great job. If you do a great job, it doesn't matter what you're doing, money will come. It's how it works. Anyway, so maybe I got a little off track on that one, but to wrap this one up, fun news. our friend Shia LeBeouf got his ass beat in New Orleans the other day. I feel really bad for this guy. I don't want to feel bad for him. I want, you know, because again, I don't care that he's an actor. Um, there's a whole bunch of people on this planet that suffered a lot of trauma, have post traumatic stress, addiction issues, whole bunch of them. I'm one of them. And I will tell you that I don't go swinging fists with bartenders and spitting in my girlfriend's face. I'll tell you that I don't do that. And so, you know, I really get, Chris gets bent out of shape when people want to blame their behavior and their actions on post-traumatic stress. That's bullshit. Excuse my language. I deal with some pretty wicked crap up in my head, and that is again personal choices. It's your choice to start swinging on a bartender because you're too damn drunk. Um, you couldn't get me drunk enough to get into a fight. That's just ridiculous. So anyway, this poor dude, I think he got arrested. I think he was going bar to bar over Mardi Gras, and bartender, I think the story said the bartender was insisting that he leave, and he didn't want to leave, and so he started trying to swing on the bartender, and some kind patrons removed him from the bar. He was shirtless, and LeBeouf found himself dirty, scuffed up, beat up on the ground, being held on the concrete in the streets of New Orleans because he was being an asshole. So, um, yeah. So that's what we got. Anyways, thanks for bearing with me on this first recording of the Uniquely Unqualified Podcast, exclusively on YouTube for right now. I'll come to you again the next day or so. Try to get about 3 episodes a week loaded up for right now. Just a little bit of a projected plan. Try to get about 100 episodes loaded up, and then we'll probably go to a once a week thing. But until now, we'll kind of do this structure where I'll come in hot on a political thing, and then we'll go through a couple of 3 or so, hot takes or stories. So, anyways, thank you everybody for giving me your time and attention and listening to uh, my my message there. And I hope to see you again very soon. Thank you.